Well, so let's start with the good news. The good news is clearly the intelligence community is taking seriously its obligation, frankly, to speak truth to power. This can't have been the testimony the president would have written himself for the intelligence community. Oddly enough, just by the normal bureaucratic process, unclassified testimony goes through a clearance process. And so the White House saw that testimony before it was given, and you would have expected the president or his aides to begin to shape this in a way that didn't make the gulf between the two so stark.
And one of the largest gulfs was on the issue of North Korea. We just played it there. We heard from Director Coates, we heard from Haspel, who leads the CIA, that the nuclear threat from North Korea remains the same. In fact, Gina Haspel said North Korea is committed to developing a long-range nuclear-armed missile that would pose a direct threat to the United States. That has not changed.
No, I mean, the intelligence community acknowledged that it's good that the United States and North Korea continue to talk. But what they're not saying is that there's been the progress made that the president has suggested has been made.
There are reports this morning that the president had an unreported meeting with Vladimir Putin, a private meeting, once again at the G20 in Argentina last year. Dan Coates was asked about the Helsinki, the 2-hour private meeting that the two of them had. He said he couldn't answer that in open testimony, that he would be able to talk more about that behind closed doors. What does that tell you?
Well, you can be sure that when Vladimir Putin goes back to Moscow, he does debrief his intelligence services about what they're talking about. And to the extent our analysts aren't understanding those conversations in real time, individually is a problem, and also the arc of those conversations, what's developing in the relationship, is there a relationship of trust? All those things factor into their assessments, both of Vladimir Putin personally and Russian policy.
During presidential campaigns, it's often said, people say, if you don't understand the nature of the threats, you can't address them. So this disconnect here, how dangerous is that for American national security?
Look, I think that this ought to be a real frustration, both for the not just the American public, but for cabinet members, right? Because the cabinet members, whether you're Mike Pompeo at the State Department or Gina Haspel or Dan Coates, as you're arraying your resources, you're arraying them against the threats as you understand them. And so the ability to communicate that to the president and be sure he understands, it's got to be a source of frustration, not just at the working levels of the intelligence community, but at more senior levels.
This was not only a briefing about threats to our national security, it was also threats to our democracy, to our election process. We heard the head of the Director of National Intelligence, Coates, say that these adversaries are refining their capabilities. They are adding new tactics for the 2020 election. We heard Senator Warner also reveal for the very first time that there was an effort during the 2018 election from unknown actors to target our infrastructure. Are they taking this seriously? Is the White House on top of this?
So the most important thing is certainly the intelligence community. There's a whole of government approach, right? The intelligence community takes the threat seriously, as we heard yesterday. They work with the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI. The testimony was pretty clear in terms of what they could say publicly, that the midterm attempt was unsuccessful. The concern is they're going to refine their techniques, but the government is clearly organized to try and thwart that in 2020.